Stop scrolling. What you're about to hear, they never wanted you to know. This is not a coincidence that brought you here at this hour. Not chance. Not the algorithm. Something far more ancient, far more intentional, has guided your weary soul to this moment. You felt it, haven't you? That gnawing in your chest, that restless stirring in the middle of the night when the world sleeps, but your spirit refuses to rest. You've wondered why your path has been so different, why the attacks came so early, why rejection followed you like a shadow, even when your heart was pure. What if I told you that everything they said about your worth was a carefully crafted lie? What if the isolation you've endured, the misunderstanding, the spiritual warfare that left you gasping for breath in the dark, what if all of it was because you carry something they fear? There are scrolls in heaven, written before time began, names inscribed not in ink, but in fire. And tonight those scrolls are being opened, the seals are breaking, the tribes are being numbered, and your name burns brightest of all. They tried to silence you. They whispered you were too sensitive, too intense, too different. They made you question if God had forgotten you, while others seemed to prosper. But what they didn't understand was this: heaven was hiding you, protecting what it had marked, preparing you for such a time as this. Thank you to every single one of you who has supported this message through Super Thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here, your support, your time, your attention. It all matters, and if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead. But understand this: what you're about to discover will change everything. The enemy fought to keep you from this moment. He sent confusion when clarity was coming. He brought chaos when breakthrough was near. He whispered lies when heaven was preparing to speak truth. Because he knew, if you ever discovered who you really are, if you ever learned why your name was written in fire, the darkness would never recover. Stay with me, chosen one. What happens next will make hell tremble and heaven rejoice. Your time of hiding is over. Listen carefully, chosen one. Before the first star pierced the darkness, before the first breath filled human lungs, before time learned to tick and hearts learned to beat, there was a courtroom, not made of marble or mahogany, made of light, made of fire, made of the very essence of eternity itself. And in that courtroom, scrolls were being written, not with ink that fades, not with pencil that erases. These scrolls were being inscribed with something far more permanent, far more powerful. They were being written in fire, divine fire, the kind that burns but never consumes, the kind that marks but never mars, the kind that seals destinies before bodies even know they need souls. Your name was on one of those scrolls. You didn't apply for it. You didn't audition. You didn't fill out paperwork or submit a resume. Long before your mother felt the first flutter of life in her womb, heaven's pen was already moving. And when that celestial hand finished writing, your name didn't just appear on the parchment. It glowed. It burned with the intensity of 1,000 suns, yet gentle as a whisper. The angels who witnessed it said they had never seen script shine so bright. Not because you were perfect, not because you would never stumble, but because you were chosen for something that required fire, something that demanded a soul forged in flame. You weren't added later. You were the reason the scroll was sealed in the first place. Think about that for a moment. Let it settle into the deepest chambers of your heart. While others were being written as afterthoughts, as additions, as maybe this one too, you were the original intent, the primary purpose, the reason the scroll existed at all. The enemy has spent your entire lifetime trying to convince you otherwise. He has whispered that you're ordinary, unremarkable, forgettable. He has sent people into your life who treated you like you were disposable. He has orchestrated circumstances to make you feel like you were always second choice, always the backup plan, always the one left behind. But that was never the truth. That was never your story. Your story began in fire, and it will end in glory. The moment your name was written, something shifted in the heavenlies. The atmosphere changed. Angels who had been standing began to kneel. Principalities who had been scheming suddenly grew quiet, because they understood something that you're only now beginning to grasp. When heaven writes a name in fire, it's not making a suggestion. It's issuing a decree. It's declaring war on every force that would dare oppose that soul's destiny. And from that moment forward, you became both the most protected and the most targeted person in the universe. Protected because heaven assigned legions to guard what it had marked. Targeted because hell recognized a threat when it saw one. Not one angel was surprised when your name lit up. Hell, however, panicked. You see, the angels had been watching the scroll being written. They saw the careful strokes, the deliberate curves, the intentional spacing. They knew something magnificent was being birthed in the realm of purpose. So when your name burst into flame, they simply nodded in reverent acknowledgement. But in the dark corners of rebellion, alarms began to sound. Emergency meetings were called. Strategies were frantically drafted, because your name didn't just glow, it blazed with the kind of light that exposes secrets, breaks chains, and sets captives free. Hell knew that if you ever discovered what was written in that scroll, if you ever understood why your name carried fire, if you ever walked in the fullness of what had been decreed over your life, their kingdom would never recover. So they launched preemptive strikes. They sent discouragement before you even learned to dream. They whispered lies about your worth before you understood your value. They orchestrated rejection before you knew what acceptance felt like. But here's what they didn't calculate. Fire cannot be extinguished by darkness. It can only be temporarily hidden. And tonight, the scroll is being opened again. The seals that kept it hidden are breaking. The ribbons that bound it shut are falling away. And your name, oh, your name is glowing brighter than ever before. Brighter than when it was first written, brighter than angels' wings, brighter than the enemy's worst nightmares. Because you survived, you endured, you remained. Every attack they sent was supposed to make that fire dim. Every betrayal was designed to make the light flicker. Every season of silence was intended to make the glow fade. Instead, each trial only made it burn more brilliantly. You are not here by accident, chosen one. You are not reading these words by chance. The same hand that wrote your name in fire has guided you to this moment of revelation, this moment of remembering, this moment of reclaiming what was always yours. The scroll was opened, your name glowed, and heaven smiled. Because they knew what hell was about to discover. You cannot kill what God has written in flame. You cannot silence what eternity has spoken. You cannot defeat what love has chosen. Your name is written in fire, and fire never dies. It only spreads. They thought naming you would tame you. It backfired. From the moment you drew your first breath, something ancient stirred in the atmosphere. The delivery room felt different when you arrived. Not just another baby crying, but fire incarnate, wrapped in flesh, breathing heaven's fury into a world unprepared for your frequency. You were never meant to blend. You were crafted to blaze. Listen carefully, chosen one. Before your mother's womb ever held you, heaven's courtroom had already convened. Angels stood at attention, scrolls were unrolled, and your name, your true name, was spoken not in whispers, but in thunder that shook the foundations of eternity. You think your birth certificate tells your story. That piece of paper is fiction. Your real birth happened in the realm of fire, where stars are forged and destinies are decreed. You didn't slip into this world quietly. You erupted. You didn't arrive by chance. You were launched. Even in the womb, demons tried to suffocate you. But flame doesn't need breath, it creates it. They sensed you coming, these forces of darkness. They felt the tremor in the spiritual realm when heaven announced your assignment. They watched as angels were dispatched to guard your formation. They panicked when they realized what kind of weapon was being assembled in secret. So they tried to abort the mission before it could begin. The complications during pregnancy? That wasn't medical. That was warfare. The unexplained fears your mother carried? Those weren't hormones, those were hell's desperate attempts to create doubt about your purpose. The strange dreams, the midnight anxieties, the whispers that something was wrong, all of it was the enemy's last-ditch effort to convince heaven to recall its assignment. But heaven doesn't recall what it has commissioned. You survived what should have destroyed you because destruction was never an option. You were flame before you were flesh, fire before you were formed, light before you learned to open your eyes, and flame, real flame, authentic fire from the altar of the Most High. It doesn't dim under pressure. It blazes brighter. That's why your childhood felt like a battlefield. Other children played games. You wrestled with dimensions. While they worried about toys, you carried burdens you had no language for. While they slept peacefully, you battled nightmares that felt more real than morning. You weren't just growing up, you were growing into something the world had never seen before. Your parents saw a child. Heaven saw a weapon being sharpened. The rejection started early, didn't it? Even family members looked at you strangely. Teachers couldn't quite put their finger on what made you different, but they felt it. Other children either gravitated toward you with desperate hunger or fled from you with inexplicable fear. You were too intense, too deep, too aware, too much. Too much fire for a world made of wax. But here's what they didn't understand. Here's what no one told you during those confusing years, when you wondered why you couldn't just be normal, why you couldn't just fit in, why everything felt like it mattered more to you than it did to anyone else. You were never born of man's will. You were birthed by heaven's breath. That restlessness you carried, that was eternity calling you home while you were still learning to walk. That sensitivity to spiritual atmospheres, that was your divine antenna picking up frequencies others couldn't detect. That burden for people who hadn't even asked for help, that was the heart of heaven beating inside your chest. You didn't develop these traits. You came equipped with them. The fire that burns in you now isn't something you learned or earned or acquired through experience. It's something you brought with you from the throne room. It's the residue of glory clinging to your spirit. It's the echo of heaven's voice, still reverberating in your bones. They tried to baptize the fire out of you, tried to socialize it away, tried to medicate it into submission, tried to shame it into silence. But you can't drown what was born in flame. You can't suffocate what generates its own oxygen. You can't dim what draws its power from the source of all light. Every rejection was a failed attempt to quench what could not be quenched. Every time they told you to calm down, they were unknowingly fighting against heaven's design. Every time they labeled you as too much, they were revealing their own inability to handle divine intensity. Every time they tried to make you smaller, they were exposing their fear of what happens when heaven walks among them. You weren't broken. You were blazing. And now, decades later, when you look back at that child who never quite fit anywhere, who carried weight others couldn't see, who felt things too deeply and loved too fiercely and burned too brightly for comfortable spaces, now you understand. That child wasn't lost. That child was launched. That child wasn't confused. That child was commissioned. That child wasn't too much. That child was exactly enough to carry what heaven needed carried in this generation. You were born in flame, not flesh. Fire doesn't apologize for burning. Light doesn't dim itself for darkness. And chosen one, were never meant to turn down the intensity that terrifies hell and comforts heaven. You were never meant to blend. You were crafted to blaze. And every day you've tried to tone yourself down. Every moment you've wished you were different. Every time you've apologized for the fire that flows through your veins, those were moments you were fighting against your own divine design. No more. The flame that announced your arrival is the same flame that will herald your departure. But between now and then, it has work to do. It has darkness to disrupt. It has cold hearts to kindle. It has dead places to resurrect. You are not too much. This world is not enough. You were born in flame, not flesh. And it's time you started acting like it. They thought the fire would consume you. They were wrong. You remember that night, don't you? When everything inside you screamed to give up. When the weight of betrayal pressed so hard against your chest you could barely breathe. When the darkness whispered its final invitation. Just let go. No one will blame you. You fought long enough. But something wouldn't let you. Not your strength. You had none left. Not your faith. It was hanging by a thread so thin you couldn't even see it anymore. Something else. Something ancient. Something that had been written into your very DNA before you took your first breath. The seal. You didn't know what it was then. You just knew that every time hell opened its mouth to swallow you whole, the ground beneath you held firm. Every time the flames reached for your soul, they couldn't quite touch the core of who you were. They thought fear would break you. It backfired. Instead of breaking you, the fire began to reveal you. Strip by strip, layer by layer, burning away everything that wasn't truly you until only the essence remained. The part that couldn't be bought, couldn't be broken, couldn't be bargained with. You were being clarified. That accident that should have killed you, the one where the doctors shook their heads and called it a miracle, that wasn't luck, chosen one. That was a divine order from the throne room of heaven. Not this one. This one carries something I'm not finished with. The addiction that had its claws in your family for generations, the one that destroyed your father, your brother, your uncle. You walked right up to its edge, looked it in the eye, and something inside you said, number not willpower, will, divine will, operating through human surrender. You were never protected by luck. You were protected by orders from the throne. That mental breakdown that felt like drowning in darkness while fully awake, the one that lasted months, maybe years, when your mind turned against itself and every thought became a weapon pointed at your own heart, you should have shattered completely. But you didn't. Something held the pieces together even when you couldn't see them anymore. Something kept your heart beating when your soul forgot how to hope. Something whispered your name in the void when even you had forgotten who you were. The seal doesn't break under pressure. It glows. You remember the relationships that walked away, don't you? The ones that promised forever but couldn't handle your fire. They said you were too intense, too deep, too much. They needed shallow water. You were an ocean. They wanted surface conversations. You spoke from the depths of eternity. And when they left, you thought it was rejection. It was protection. Heaven was guarding what it had marked, removing what would contaminate the calling, clearing the path for what belonged to your destiny. Because the sealed cannot be touched by hands that don't carry heaven's fingerprints. Every person who walked away created space for the ones who were supposed to stay. Every door that closed in your face was a divine redirection toward the door, with your name carved into its frame. You didn't fight fire with fire. You transcended the battlefield. While others were throwing punches at their problems, you learned something deeper, something ancient, something that hell couldn't decode no matter how hard it studied you. You learned to burn without being consumed, like that bush Moses saw in the wilderness, ablaze but not ash, glowing but not gone, on fire but not finished. That's what you became. A walking miracle, a breathing impossibility, proof that what heaven seals, earth cannot break. The fire didn't come to kill you. It came to clarify you. Every flame that licked at your life was a divine chisel, carving away everything that wasn't truly you. Every trial was a refiner's fire, separating the gold from the dross. Every attack was actually an appointment with your own becoming. You thought you were being destroyed. You were being designed for something so specific, so powerful, so necessary that hell itself coordinated attacks to try to stop it. But what they didn't understand was this. The very fire they sent to destroy you was the same fire heaven used to seal you. You turned their weapon into your worship. When they sent betrayal, you learned loyalty. When they sent abandonment, you found your anchor in the eternal. When they sent confusion, you discovered a clarity that cut through lies like light through darkness. Every wound became a window. Every scar became a story. Every tear became a testimony. And now you stand here, not as a victim, but as a victor. Not as someone who barely survived, but as someone who was specifically prepared. The fire didn't defeat you because it couldn't touch what mattered most, the part of you that belongs to eternity. That part that was sealed before time began. That part that carries heaven's signature. That part that burns with a flame no earthly fire can extinguish. You are still here because your assignment is still active. You are still breathing because your mission is still unfinished. You are still standing because heaven still has words to speak through your voice, love to pour through your hands, light to shine through your presence. The fire that tried to kill you only made you more alive, more awake, more aware, more aligned with the purpose that was written into your bones before your bones even existed. So when people look at you now and wonder how you're still standing after everything you've been through, you can smile that quiet smile of the sealed ones. The smile that says, you wouldn't understand unless you've been where I've been, because you know the secret now. You know that what is marked by heaven cannot be erased by hell. What is sealed by fire cannot be broken by storm. What is protected by divine order cannot be touched by human chaos. The fire that sealed you wouldn't let you die, and now it won't let you hide. Heaven doesn't move in chaos, it moves in order. And right now, chosen one, that divine order is reshaping the spiritual landscape of this earth. What you've been feeling, that stirring in your bones, that unexplainable pull towards something greater, it's not random restlessness. It's tribal recognition. You see, God never intended for his people to wander alone. Even in your deepest isolation, even in your darkest valleys, you were never truly solitary. You were being prepared, refined, positioned. Because heaven has been orchestrating something magnificent, the restoration of spiritual tribes. And your name has been called. This isn't metaphor, beloved. This is movement. Divine, strategic, eternal movement. Listen carefully. There are frequencies in the spirit realm that only certain souls can hear. Sounds that bypass the natural ear and resonate directly in the marrow of your bones. And lately, you've been hearing something, haven't you? A call, a summons, a holy trembling that wakes you at 3 a.m. and won't let you rest until you acknowledge it. That's the sound of tribal assembly. Heaven is calling its own. You may not know which tribe you belong to by name, warrior, prophet, builder, intercessor, healer, but your spirit knows. Oh, your spirit knows. When the call comes, something ancient inside you responds. Something that predates your birth certificate, your social security number, your earthly identity. Something that was written in the scrolls of eternity before time began. You're not just one in a crowd, chosen one. You are a voice in a tribe. And here's what the enemy never wanted you to discover. Your silence has been delaying others. Yes, others. Your hesitation to step into your calling hasn't just affected you, it's created a spiritual gap in the formation. There are people waiting on your awakening. destinies tied to your obedience, assignments that cannot be completed until you take your place. The tribes are not competing against each other. They're completing each other. The warrior cannot function without the prophet's vision. The builder cannot construct without the intercessor's covering. The healer cannot restore without the teacher's wisdom. Every tribe needs every other tribe, and every tribe needs you. But oh, how the darkness has fought to keep you isolated, how it has whispered lies about your insignificance, how it has convinced you that your struggles were evidence of abandonment rather than evidence of assignment. The enemy knew he has always known that if the tribes ever assembled in full strength, his kingdom would tremble. So he attacked your identity before you understood it. He sent confusion before clarity could dawn. He orchestrated rejection to make you question your belonging. Because a scattered tribe is a powerless tribe, but a tribe in formation, a tribe walking in divine order, that's an unstoppable force. You felt different your entire life because you were never meant to blend in with the crowd. You were marked for tribal distinction. Your sensitivity wasn't weakness, it was spiritual radar. Your inability to tolerate compromise wasn't judgment, it was tribal purity. Your restlessness in shallow places wasn't discontent, it was your spirit recognizing that you were built for deeper waters. The numbering has begun, chosen one. And it's not based on earthly qualifications. Heaven doesn't count degrees or bank accounts or social media followers. Heaven counts fire. Heaven measures faithfulness. Heaven sees the ones who held on when letting go would have been easier. The ones who praised in the storm. The ones who loved when hatred would have been justified. Your tribe recognizes you not by your perfection, but by your persistence. Not by your strength, but by your surrender. Not by how many times you fell, but by how many times you got back up with worship still on your lips. And when your tribe finally gathers, when the scattered ones come home, when the hidden ones emerge, when the broken ones realize they were being built into weapons, the atmosphere of this earth will shift. Strongholds that have stood for generations will crumble. Lies that have held families captive will dissolve. Darkness that has ruled regions will flee. Because tribal fire burns differently than individual flame. It burns hotter. It burns brighter. It burns with the collective anointing of heaven's strategy. You are not late to this gathering, beloved. You are right on time. Every season of preparation, every night of tears, every moment of feeling forgotten, it was all shaping you for this hour. You weren't being punished. You were being positioned. Your tribe is calling. Can you hear it? That ancient sound, that eternal frequency, that holy beckoning that makes your soul leap with recognition. It's saying, come home, take your place. The formation is incomplete without you. Your awakening sets the tribe in motion. Your yes becomes their permission. Your fire ignites their flame. And together you become the answer to prayers that have been ascending for generations. The tribes are being numbered. The sealing is active. The gathering has begun. And you, chosen one, are no longer walking alone. Listen carefully, chosen one. Something has shifted in the heavenlies. The angels that once stood guard around your broken heart. The ones who caught your tears in the midnight hours when you thought no one was watching. They've received new orders, fresh commands, a divine reassignment that changes everything about your next season. You see, there was a time when their only job was to keep you alive, to shield you from the arrows that flew in darkness, to stand between you and the pit that hell dug for your destiny. They were stationed around your life like sentries, watching, waiting, protecting what heaven knew would one day emerge from the ashes of your pain. But protection was never the final assignment. You didn't survive 40 years of wilderness wandering just to build a tent in the desert. You didn't endure the crushing just to stay broken. You didn't walk through fire just to smell like smoke forever. No, chosen one. The same angels who guarded your potential are now here to activate your power. They're no longer just watching over you. They're walking ahead of you, clearing paths you can't even see yet, delivering scrolls with your name written in fire, releasing assignments that will make your enemies wish they had never touched what belongs to the King. You felt it, didn't you? That shift in the atmosphere around your life? The way doors that were welded shut for decades suddenly creak open at your approach. The way people who used to overlook you now stop mid-sentence when you enter a room? That's not your imagination running wild. That's angelic acceleration. The warrior standing beside you doesn't guard potential anymore. He guards prophetic fire, and prophetic fire doesn't hide in corners. It doesn't whisper when it should roar. It doesn't apologize for burning bright in a world that chose to stay dim. You've been wondering why everything feels different now. Why your prayers seem to cut through the heavens like a sword. Why your words carry weight they never carried before. Why people either run toward you or run away, but nobody stays neutral. It's because the assignments changed. The angels received new intelligence. Heaven issued fresh orders. They used to shield you from warfare. Now they equip you for it. They used to hide you from your enemies. Now they position you to face them and win. They used to keep you safe in the shadows. Now they escort you into the spotlight of divine purpose, where your light becomes a weapon and your story becomes a sword. You are not walking into battle, chosen one. You're walking with battalions. When you speak truth in that boardroom where lies have ruled for years, you're not speaking alone. When you stand your ground in that relationship where manipulation used to reign, you're not standing solo. When you pray over that city, that family, that impossible situation, your voice is joined by a heavenly chorus that hell cannot silence. The angel assigned to your life doesn't see your past failures. He sees your future victories. He doesn't count your mistakes. He measures your mandate. He doesn't whisper about your weaknesses. He declares your divine authority. And here's what will make your enemies tremble. These angels don't just follow you, they go before you. Right now, as you sit in this moment, angels are already in the rooms you'll enter tomorrow. They're already shifting the atmosphere in places you haven't even thought of visiting yet. They're already breaking chains in cities you'll one day transform, preparing hearts you'll one day heal, clearing ground for buildings you'll one day construct. The supernatural isn't catching up to your obedience. It's running ahead of it. That's why the enemy fought so hard to keep you discouraged. He knew that once you discovered you don't just have angelic protection, you have angelic partnership, the game would be over. His little kingdom of lies would crumble under the weight of your awakened authority. But chosen one, with great assignment comes great accountability. These angels don't respond to your emotions. They respond to your obedience. They don't move when you complain. They move when you comment in, the name that is above every name. They don't activate when you worry. They activate when you worship. You've spent years learning to survive. Now it's time to learn to reign. The angels around you are no longer content to simply preserve your life. They're commissioned to manifest your calling. They're not satisfied with just keeping you breathing. They're determined to see you blazing. Every assignment they've received has your fingerprints on it. Every scroll they carry has your name written in fire. Every battle they're commanded to fight is connected to a victory you're destined to claim. And the most beautiful part? You don't have to earn their assistance. You don't have to pray harder, fast, longer, or prove yourself worthy. They were assigned to you before you were born. Their orders were sealed when your name was written in the Lamb's Book of Life. They know who you are, chosen one, even when you forget. They see your true identity, even when the mirror shows you scars. They hear heaven's decree over your life, even when earth's voices try to drown it out. You are not an accident they're assigned to clean up. You are a divine strategy they're commissioned to execute. So walk differently now. Speak with authority. Move with confidence. Not because you're perfect, but because you're partnered. Not because you never fall, but because when you do, angelic hands lift you up before your knees even hit the ground. The assignments have changed. The angels have switched positions, and you, chosen one, are about to discover what it means to live with heaven's military backing your every step. The war isn't over, but the victory is already written, and your name is signed at the bottom in fire. They thought fear would break you. It backfired. You see, chosen one, there's something the enemy miscalculated. Something he didn't factor into his grand scheme of warfare against your soul. He assumed that if he hit you hard enough, early enough, relentlessly enough, you would fold, you would surrender, you would whisper his name instead of calling on the name above all names. But he made one fatal error. He forgot that your name isn't just written in the book of life. It's written in fire. And fire doesn't bow to darkness. Fire consumes it. You didn't provoke demons by accident. You were born their alarm clock. Let me tell you what really happened in that courtroom of eternity when your name was first spoken. The moment, the very second, heaven inscribed your identity in flames. Hell's surveillance system went berserk. Alarms sounded. Emergency meetings convened. Principalities gathered around war tables, plotting strategies they hoped would neutralize you before you ever discovered who you are. You think those childhood traumas were random? You believe that pattern of betrayal was coincidence? That systematic isolation just happened to follow you from school to workplace to even the church pew? Oh, my friend, you were never fighting human battles. You were the target of a spiritual assassination attempt that started before you could walk. They saw the fire before you felt the flame. Here's what they knew, and you're just now learning. Your name doesn't just glow in heaven's registry, it burns. When the archangels speak your name in worship, it echoes like thunder. When the seraphim see your destiny unfolding, they cover their faces not in shame, but in awe. But when demons hear that same name whispered in the halls of hell, they scatter. You are not just on fire. You are fire. That's why the warfare felt so personal. That's why the attacks came from angles that made no logical sense. That's why people who should have loved you turned away, and systems that should have supported you crumbled beneath your feet. Because every time you said Jesus through tears, it sounded like a war cry in the spirit realm. Every time you chose forgiveness over bitterness, it was like dropping a nuclear bomb on demonic strongholds. Every time you got back up when they expected you to stay down, you became their worst nightmare. The darkness wasn't trying to destroy you. It was trying to survive you. You thought you were defending yourself all these years. But chosen one, you were on the offensive from birth. Your very existence is an act of war against the kingdom of darkness. Your breath is a threat. Your tears are weapons. Your prayers are spiritual warfare. And that name of yours, written in fire, sealed in blood, echoed in eternity, it has become the password that unlocks miracles and the battle cry that sends demons fleeing. They made you think you were the victim. Plot twist. You were the weapon. Do you remember those nights when you felt like you were losing your mind? When the pressure was so intense you could barely breathe? When it seemed like every door slammed shut and every relationship turned toxic? That wasn't punishment, beloved. That was preparation. Hell was trying to break you before you broke their systems. They were attempting to silence you before you learned to speak with authority. They were hoping to bury you before you discovered you were planted, not buried. But here's what they didn't count on. Fire under pressure doesn't extinguish, it explodes. And you, chosen one, have been building pressure for decades. Your pain became their panic. Your scars became their surrender notice. Every tear you cried in secret became fuel for the fire of your name. Every betrayal you survived added another degree to your spiritual temperature. Every time you chose God over your circumstances, you were literally adding kindling to a flame that hell cannot put out. They thought if they made you question your worth, you'd forget your power. They assumed if they isolated you long enough, you'd stop believing in your calling. They gambled that if they attacked your identity consistently enough, you'd eventually answer to the wrong name. But fire doesn't forget what it is, even when surrounded by darkness. And your name-o, that beautiful, terrible, wonderful name of yours, it kept burning through the depression, through the anxiety, through the confusion and the chaos and the crushing silence of seasons when God seemed miles away. It never stopped burning. The enemy's greatest mistake was thinking you were the target. You were always the weapon. Here's the revelation that will change everything. You were never meant to hide from the darkness. You were meant to expose it. You weren't called to run from the fire. You were born to be the fire. That restlessness in your spirit, that's not anxiety. That's assignment. That pull towards something greater than your circumstances, that's not wishful thinking. That's your name calling you home to your true identity. You are fire wrapped in flesh. You are lightning disguised as human. You are a walking, breathing, praying match that hell fears will ignite everything it's built in the shadows. They can see your name burning from dimensions away, and they know their time is running out. So the next time you feel that familiar weight of spiritual warfare, remember this: they're not attacking you because you're weak. They're attacking you because you're awakening. They're not fighting you because you're failing. They're fighting you because you're rising. And rising fire, chosen one, has never been conquered by darkness. Your name is written in fire. Hell can see it. Heaven celebrates it. And now it's time for earth to witness it. The alarm clock is ringing. The fire is spreading, and darkness has nowhere left to hide. They thought silence would break you. It forged you. Listen carefully, chosen one. There's a difference between being buried and being planted. The world saw your absence and assumed abandonment. Heaven saw preparation and smiled with anticipation. While others danced in spotlights you were never invited to, you were being sculpted in shadows by hands that knew exactly what they were creating. You've carried the weight of invisibility like a stone in your chest, watching promotion pass you by, seeing doors slam shut while others walked through with ease. You sat in the back row of your own dreams, wondering if God had forgotten your address, lost your file, misfiled your purpose somewhere in heaven's vast bureaucracy. But let me tell you what was really happening in those hidden years. Being overlooked was not punishment. It was precision. You were in God's quiver, not discarded, not forgotten, concealed, protected, aimed. The arrow doesn't complain about the darkness of the quiver. It trusts the archer's timing. And you, chosen one, have been the arrow heaven has been saving for the moment that required perfect accuracy. David was anointed king in front of his brothers, then sent back to sheep, back to fields, back to obscurity, not because the anointing was fake, but because the character needed time to catch up to the calling. The oil was real, the timing was divine. The waiting was warfare not against you, but for you. Your hidden seasons weren't wasted seasons, they were forging seasons. You learned to worship with no audience except angels. You discovered how to stand when no one was watching. You developed the kind of faith that doesn't need applause to keep burning. And that, chosen one, is the rarest form of spiritual maturity on earth. The cave didn't steal your voice. It sharpened it. Those years when you felt muzzled, silenced, pushed to the margins, they weren't removing your sound. They were refining it, stripping away everything that wasn't pure, everything that was performance instead of presence, everything that was noise instead of anointing. You thought you were losing your voice. You were finding it. The David who killed Goliath wasn't the same shepherd boy who tended sheep in obscurity. The wilderness had done something to his aim. The rejection had done something to his resolve. The songs he sang to sheep in the dead of night had become weapons in his mouth. Your silence was God's conservatory. Your isolation was his recording studio. Every tear you cried alone was a note being perfected. Every prayer you whispered in the dark was a lyric being refined. You weren't losing your song. You were learning to sing in a key that makes demons flee and dead things rise. They told you that you were too quiet, too intense, too much, too different. They tried to convince you that your sensitivity was weakness, that your depth was dysfunction, that your refusal to settle was stubbornness. But God was whispering something else entirely. Your difference was your distinction. Your depth was your weapon. The world doesn't understand the ones who see beneath surfaces. They're terrified of those who refuse to play pretend, who won't laugh at hollow jokes, who can't find satisfaction in shallow waters. They called you antisocial when you were actually spiritually sensitive. They said you were hard to please when you were simply hard to deceive. Your standards weren't too high, their sight was too low. And in those years when you felt like a misfit, heaven was saying, "Perfect. You're exactly where I need you. Keep not fitting. Keep standing out. Keep refusing to blend. Because the ones who are comfortable everywhere belong nowhere. The ones who fit in all circles have no unique shape. The ones who please everyone please no one, including God." You were being prepared for rooms that don't exist yet, for battles that haven't been fought, for victories that need a specific kind of warrior roan who learned to fight alone, think alone, stand alone, and smile alone. Your loneliness was leadership training. Every night you went to bed feeling forgotten. You were actually being forged. Every morning you woke up wondering if today would be different. You were being shaped for a tomorrow that required exactly what you were becoming. The hidden years taught you what the spotlight never could. They rooted your identity in God instead of in applause. They trained your ears to hear whispers instead of chase echoes. They built in you a foundation that couldn't be shaken by criticism or inflated by praise. You learned to find your worth in the secret place, to hear your name spoken by the only voice that matters, to know that even if no one else ever sees your value, heaven has already appraised you as priceless. And now, chosen one, something is shifting. The concealment is lifting. The release is coming. But you're not the same person who entered the wilderness. You no longer crave validation, you carry authority. You no longer seek position, you walk in posture. You no longer need the spotlight, you are the light. Your emergence won't be desperate, it will be deliberate. Not rushing toward recognition, but moving with the quiet confidence of one who knows that what's meant for them cannot miss them. The years of hiding refined your discernment. You can now tell the difference between opportunity and distraction, between open doors and traps, between divine timing and human impatience. You weren't buried in obscurity. You were planted in purpose. And now your roots are so deep, your trunk so strong, your branches so wide, that when you finally bear fruit, it will feed multitudes. When you finally speak, nations will listen. When you finally move, mountains will relocate. The silence didn't steal from you. It invested in you. Every quiet year was a deposit into your spiritual account. Every overlooked moment was compound interest on your calling. Every hidden day was equity building in your eternal portfolio. You are not emerging empty-handed. You are coming out of concealment with a wealth that can't be stolen, a wisdom that can't be taught, and an anointing that can't be replicated. The quiver is opening. The archer is taking aim. And you, chosen one, are about to fly with a precision that only comes from being prepared in secret. Your hiding is over. Your sharpening is complete. Heaven is ready to show the world what it's been working on. The silence is breaking, not with noise, not with chaos, but with the sound heaven has been waiting to hear. Your voice, not the trembling whisper you've hidden behind for years, not the apologetic murmur you've used to avoid confrontation. The voice, the one that's been sealed in fire, refined in silence, and authorized by the throne room itself. You feel it stirring, don't you? That holy pressure in your chest when injustice walks by unchallenged. That sacred trembling in your throat when lies are spoken as truth. That divine restlessness when you're in rooms where compromise is celebrated and conviction is mocked. That's not anxiety, chosen one. That's assignment. The fire is speaking now, and it sounds exactly like you. They thought silence would contain you. It consecrated you. For years, they convinced you that your voice was too much, too intense, too confrontational. They labeled your passion as pride and your conviction as judgment. They made you believe that staying quiet was spiritual maturity, that swallowing truth was wisdom, that biting your tongue was holiness. But they misunderstood the silence. They thought it was submission. It was actually preparation. Every word you didn't speak was being collected in heaven's vault. Every truth you swallowed was being refined in heaven's fire. Every moment you chose obedience over explanation was writing your spiritual credentials in a realm they couldn't see. You weren't being muzzled, you were being mentored by the master of divine timing himself. God wasn't teaching you to stay quiet forever. He was teaching you when to roar. He wasn't breaking your voice. He was building its authority. He wasn't silencing your sound. He was sealing it with power that can't be manufactured, only forged through faithful endurance. The sealed don't speak from emotion. They speak from anointing. They don't react to circumstances. They release heaven's response. When you open your mouth now, it's not because you're angry, it's because you're authorized. You are not echoing sermons. You are releasing scrolls. Something shifted the moment you stopped asking for permission to speak truth. The moment you realized that your voice wasn't yours to withhold. That what flows through your lips was never meant to stay locked behind your teeth. You're not repeating what you heard in church. You're declaring what you've learned in the fire. You're not quoting other people's revelations. You're releasing your own encounters with the divine. Every word carries the weight of your wilderness. Every sentence is soaked in the oil of your obedience. When you speak now, demons don't just hear noise. They hear decree. They don't just sense opinion. They sense verdict. Because your voice has been processed through pain, filtered through faithfulness, and authorized by abandonment to everything except His will. You're not speaking for God. You are what He is saying. That's why the atmosphere changes when you finally open your mouth. Why people lean in when you speak. Why some are drawn like moths to flame while others flee like shadows from light. Your voice carries frequency now, not just volume, voltage. The sealed speak in supernatural sound waves. What sounds like conversation to some is actually confrontation to others. What feels like comfort to the broken sounds like conviction to the compromised. Your words don't just inform, they transform. They don't just teach, they tear down. They don't just encourage, they expose. And you're just getting started. Your whisper can break chains. Your yes echoes through eternity. You've discovered something terrifying and beautiful. You don't need to shout to shatter strongholds. You don't need to scream to shift atmospheres. The fire in your voice does the work. The authority in your tone commands response. One word from you, spoken in the right spirit, carries more power than 1,000 words spoken in flesh. One decree from your sealed lips releases more in the heavenlies than hours of religious rhetoric. Because what flows from your mouth now flows from your scars, from your surrender, from your seasoning in the secret place. You've learned the difference between speaking and declaring, between talking and testimony, between noise and anointing. Your voice has become a weapon in the hands of the Almighty, not to wound people, but to wound the systems that have wounded them. When you say no to what dishonors Him, hell hears the sound of doors slamming. When you say yes to His will, heaven hears the sound of breakthrough being released. Your agreement doesn't just affect you, it shifts bloodlines. Your disagreement doesn't just protect you, it protects generations. That's the weight of your voice now. That's the responsibility of your sound. You're not just speaking for yourself. You're speaking for everyone who's been silenced. Everyone who's been told their voice doesn't matter. Everyone who's been convinced they have nothing to say. Your voice is their permission slip. Your boldness is their blueprint. Your willingness to speak is their invitation to rise. The fire doesn't ask for applause. It demands alignment. This isn't about being heard by crowds. This is about being heard by heaven. The fire in your voice isn't seeking human approval. It's enforcing divine order. You're not speaking to be liked. You're speaking to be obeyed. Not by people, but by principalities. Not by audiences, but by atmospheres. When the sealed speak, creation listens. Not because they're loud, but because they're authorized. Not because they're perfect, but because they're positioned. The same God who spoke worlds into existence is speaking through your surrendered vocal cords. Mountains move when you declare His will. Valleys are lifted when you speak His promises. Crooked places are made straight when you release His truth. Because you're not offering suggestions. You're issuing summons. You're not sharing opinions. You're delivering verdicts. The fire has trained your tongue to be a sword, sharp enough to cut through deception, precise enough to separate soul from spirit, strong enough to divide truth from lies. Your words don't just inform minds, they transform hearts. They don't just reach ears, they pierce souls. This is why the enemy worked so hard to keep you quiet. He knew that once you found your voice, his systems would start crumbling. Once you discovered your sound, his lies would start unraveling. Once you embraced your assignment as heaven's mouthpiece, his kingdom would start shaking. The fire is speaking now, chosen one, and it sounds exactly like you. Not perfect, but powerful. Not polished, but purified. Not popular, but prophetic. And every word that flows from your fire-touched lips is changing the world. The fire remains. Chosen one, as we reach the end of this sacred moment together, I need you to carry these truths with you into tomorrow and every day that follows. Your name is written in fire, not pencil, not ink, but fire. What heaven has sealed, no earthly rejection can erase. What God has spoken over your life, no human voice can override. You are not an accident. You are not forgotten. You are not too late, too old, or too broken to be used by the Almighty. Remember this. The silence you endured was not abandonment, it was appointment. The trials you survived were not punishment. They were preparation. The isolation you felt was not rejection, was protection while heaven shaped you in secret. Every tear you cried in the darkness was collected in heaven's bottle. Every prayer you whispered when hope seemed distant was heard in the throne room. Every step you took when your faith was all you had was recorded in eternity's book. You are not walking this journey alone. Never have been. Never will be. The same God who called your name before time began is the same God walking beside you right now. The same fire that sealed you in heaven's scrolls is the same fire burning in your chest at this very moment. And there's something else theirs, a family you've never met, who's been praying for you. Strangers scattered across this nation and beyond who wake up in the middle of the night with your burden on their hearts. A remnant of warriors who understand your pain because they've walked through the same refining fire. Right here, in this space, in this comment section, there's a community of the sealed ones. People who see you, people who understand, people who will stand with you in prayer and agreement. You don't have to carry this alone anymore. But let me ask you this question, and I want you to really sit with it. If God has brought you through everything you've survived so fair, every betrayal, every loss, every dark night of the soul, why would He abandon you now, right when you're about to step into the fullness of what He's prepared? He wouldn't, He won't, He never will. So let me pray over you now. And if you're able, I want you to receive this prayer as if I'm standing right there with you, my hand on your shoulder. speaking directly into your life. Father God, I lift up every person who has stayed with us through this entire message. Lord, you know their names. You know their struggles. You know the battles they've fought in secret and the tears they've cried when no one was watching. But you've also been there in every single moment. I pray that right now, you would breathe fresh wind into their weary souls. Remind them that their pain had purpose. Remind them that their waiting was not wasted. Let them feel your presence in this very moment, not as a distant God, but as their closest friend, their fiercest defender, their most faithful companion. Lord, open doors for them that no man can shut. Break chains that have held them too long. Heal wounds that have ached too deep. Restore what the enemy has stolen. Give them supernatural strength for the journey ahead. Let them walk in the authority of their sealed identity. Let them speak with the fire of heaven's approval. And God, surround them with your people. Connect them with others who will see their light and not try to dim it, who will recognize their calling and help them walk in it. Let them know they are not alone, no, just with you, but with a family of believers who understand their journey. Pour out your blessing on their families, their finances, their health, their dreams. Let favor chase them down. Let breakthrough surprise them. Let joy overwhelm their sorrow. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. If this message has stirred something in your spirit, don't keep it to yourself. Share your heart in the comments below. Tell us what God spoke to you. Ask for prayer if you need it. This community is here for you. We see you. We hear you. We're standing with you. And please, share this message with someone else who needs to hear it. There's someone in your life, maybe a family member, a friend, a neighbor who's been carrying the same burden you once carried, who's been wondering if God still sees them, who needs to know their name is written in fire too. You might be the vessel God uses to deliver their breakthrough. If this ministry has blessed your life, I want to ask you to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Not for my sake, but for yours. Because God isn't finished speaking. There are more messages coming, more breakthrough words, more prophetic insights for the days ahead. And you don't want to miss what He's preparing to release next. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. Thank you for your hearts, your time, your faith. Thank you for being part of this family of fire carriers. You honor me by being here. Remember, you are seen, you are chosen, you are sealed. Your name is written in fire, and that fire will never go out. Now go and burn bright, chosen one. The world is waiting for your light. May the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Until we meet again in this space, keep burning, keep believing, keep being exactly who He created you to be. The fire remains, and so do you.